the plaques and memorial plaques. We have a representative from both families that will do the induction. We have, let's see now, I told you it's new for me, so I'm trying to get it straight. I have first Evelyn Daniel Anderson, who will be inducted by Roland Byrd Anderson Jr., who is the nephew of Ms. Anderson, of Anderson. And this is the father. His father is the youngest brother, right? Okay. And we have Ms. Ada Ruth Stovall, inducted by her mentor. This is a mentor. Ms. Brochard was a mentor. Ms. Stovall was her mentor. So, but she's the Dean of College of Human Environmental Sciences at the University of Alabama. So we start with Mr. Anderson. Go down. Oh, so I just go on. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, what I'm going to do is read the plaque. Ms. Anderson, Evelyn Daniel Anderson. Oh, okay, so I just, okay. He made his signature. I'm sorry, I got this wrong. If you come next year, it'll be right. Okay, we have Mr. Anderson Jr. to do his induction presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Byrd Anderson, and I am here to introduce to you the memory of our dear aunt, my dear aunt, our dear friend, Evelyn Daniel Anderson. I'll be joined up here in just a few minutes by my cousin Tom, who will also say a few words. But there's a host of family here that was introduced earlier, and some more in addition to that. And there's a big community here. A whole bus, I think, came from Greensboro, Alabama. And we are delighted all to be here with you. I think I get to do the speaking today because in my introduction it was noted that I'm the youngest son of the youngest brother of Evelyn, making me the youngest cousin, meaning they told me to do it. And they've been telling me what to do for 48 years, and I've been doing what they said. I really mean it when I tell you I can hardly begin to tell you what a special person that Evelyn was. The year that she passed away in 1998, I wrote in my Christmas letter that I do annually, that she had a special kind of love that made you think, that made everyone think, that she loved you more than anyone else. And I had that on my mind, and I talked to my cousin Evelyn, who sent me an email thinking of her thoughts, and spoke to her last night, and she identified the exact same sense of dedication and engagement that Evelyn had with everyone she ever met. She was literally and figuratively invested in our lives, and I'm convinced that she still is today. Evelyn was particularly close to my aunt. My cousin Evelyn was particularly close to my aunt Evelyn. I was particularly close to my aunt Evelyn. My cousin Tom, my father, his brothers, we all feel particularly close to Aunt Evelyn. Every neighbor she has in the community of Greensboro and in the state of Alabama, and a world changer, as you said, had that sense of a special closeness with Evelyn. We are thrilled to be here. She deserves this, and we recognize that this is truly hallowed ground where famous Alabamans get to be joined at the hip with our aunt, our friend, our sister, our neighbor, very deservedly so. She joins these extraordinary names. To borrow from and modify, paraphrase a bit from the book of Ecclesiasticus, and as Episcopalians like me say on All Saints' Day, and is in the title of a book written in 1941, modified a bit, let us now praise famous women. You've read, I hope, some of the extraordinary parts of her life and her accomplishments a few. She was hurt in a tragic accident in her 4th year on Christmas Eve, an event not spoken hardly about at all since that time. Early on, there was little or no hope for recovery, but she was nursed to stabilization and ultimately a very mainstream life by a loving mom and by a physician father who probably bent a few rules to make sure that she got attention and care when she desperately needed. 3 very supporting brothers, and as I noted before, an overwhelmingly adoptive community of Greensboro. She was tutored at home through middle school by Kate Worthing, and then entered Greensboro High School, almost certainly the first disabled person to do that, and as would set a standard for her life, became the valedictorian of her senior class, and went on to great things. Great things right here at Judson College, where she, as noted earlier, had a roommate, Johnny Martin, who was the daughter of my grandfather's nurse. Judson honors and distinctions, cum laude graduate, senior class president, who's who of students, a graduate degree from the University of Alabama, an unofficial and then official teacher at Greensboro High School, the very first. She literally had laws changed. She went on to serve on governor's committees and received governor's commendations. She was a guidance counselor of the year, a master citizen of Greensboro. I made up that title, but trust me, I think she has keys with her in heaven to the city. She was a historian and a women's circle leader and fervent and dedicated worshiper at Greensboro First Presbyterian Church. She was a motivational speaker before that was cool, before they were all over television. She was honored as the oldest survivor of a major spinal cord injury by the National Spinal Cord Association, and on and on and on. These are extraordinary accomplishments for anybody, much less someone with such an unusual disability. But as noted, and as you know, she did not view it that way. I heard her say it a lot. She was blessed. She felt fortunate. God gave her a mission to advocate, and she advocated. In today's parlance, young ladies, that's represent. She represented. Evelyn served by example. And I hope as you recognize her today, that you'll be reminded or somehow engaged with her inner soul and her spirit. As already noted, she touched family and friends uniquely. My older sister thought that Valentine's cards were Alabama's, because the only important part of a Valentine card was that you send and receive one from Alabama. And when she was 15, when she learned they were called Valentine's. My father's cherished memories, when I spoke to him about this, first thing he said, Evelyn loved to talk and talk and talk. She liked to visit. She would go visit. She loved going to the movies, to the picture show, and she was fearless. She was fearless in things that you and I take for granted to do every day. Up a hill or down a hill, being pushed or pulled, Evelyn was fearless. Getting in a bed with the help of a neighbor or family member or a friend or a contraption to get her in it, she showed fearlessness. She loved cherished memories of a long-awaited boat trip when she finally got to the port and found a ship that had doors wide enough for her to enter and the family to take a trip to Cuba. My cousin Evelyn wrote me that Nunner, she calls her Nunner, that whole clan calls her Nunner. Imagine that. My cousin Evelyn is so selfish that there was another Evelyn. Nunner. She became Nunner permanently and loved that name. Nunner loved literature, teaching literature, Shakespeare festivals. Evelyn told me that, although not an Auburn fan, Auburn has a great saying, all in, and Evelyn lived her life all in. She invested in us. If you went to work for a public company or anybody you knew did, she bought stock in that company. She bought stock in Jefferson Pilot because they covered the University of Alabama. She bought Alabama football tickets, Alabama gymnastics tickets. She attended everything she could get to, and and she made it. Baptisms, ribbon cuttings, special events. She was a passionate historian of Greensboro, of our family tree, of the state of Alabama. I have 1,000 memories myself, but lucky I'm only going to share one. My middle son Tommy is 16, and when he was an infant, he was very, very ill and ultimately received a heart transplant. He's fine today, but Evelyn was all in with us in those trying early days. She came to visit a lot, and once when Tommy was a year or so old, she asked me personally, one-on-one, how Tommy was really doing. And I guess rather flippantly, I said, Tommy's fine. Tommy has to take medicine, and we pay special attention to him, and he gets sick a little more often than the average kid his age, but by and large, Tommy's pretty normal. And Evelyn gave me a stern stare that gripped my heart, and I remember it to this day. And she looked at me and said, he is normal. You better believe it. And that was, I think, how Evelyn lived. She was really it. Thank you so much. And as I noted, my cousin Tom wants to come say hello.
Thank you for this opportunity. My father was Evelyn's older brother, and today would have been his 87th birthday. And I know he's looking down on all this, and he'd be very proud and very honored that you are recognizing Evelyn in this way today, so thank all of you. I'm an educator like Evelyn, and like so many educators I know, she was a lifelong learner. As I teach my college classes today, there are always 2 or 3 students in every one of those classes who soak up everything you want to teach and who were just eager to learn more. And Evelyn was always one of those people. My wife and I would come down here to see her at least once or twice a year, and it was always an adventure. One of the last times we went to a crawfish festival nearby here, an all-day event, probably a lot of you know about that. She took us around to see a lot of these homes and other places that had been built by the students of Auburn in this experimental architecture program. We saw a beautiful chapel on a farm built out of old tires covered in stucco. We saw a wonderful community down by the river where they take cinder blocks and insulate these houses with hay in between the rows of cinder blocks. And this man, who was not only proud of his house, he also took me to this other little house he had where he had a freezer full of the most monster catfish I've ever seen in my life. He probably had 20 of them in there, each of which weighed probably at least 80 pounds. She took me to visit a farmer friend of hers who made sculptures out of hay bales. Probably you've seen this around here. He makes gigantic rabbits and trains. And, she just knew all of these interesting people. And one of my last memories, my wife and I took her to the beach down near St. George Island about a year before she died. My wife found this house that had been built by a man who had disabilities very similar to Evelyn's. It had ramps going up into the house and also ramps that went all the way out connected with a 50-foot dock that went out into the bay. And Evelyn rolled out there every day with me and got out her fishing pole and just fished away. For the entire week we were down there on vacation. Like Byrd said, I think Evelyn was always grateful for the life that she had and didn't spend a lot of time dwelling on the things that she didn't. And I think that really defined her. She gave as much as she got, particularly to her family, her friends, and her community. And I'd really like to thank people like Mr. Curd and Mrs. Cherry and all the other people in Greensboro, her friends, who spearheaded this effort to honor her today. Thank you very much. Thank all of you. As a family, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Evelyn Daniel Anderson, 1926-1998. Becoming a paraplegic at age 4 and considering her disability only physical inconvenience, she was the catalyst for the Alabama legislature to change a law prohibiting the handicapped from teaching and became the first handicapped teacher hired by the Alabama Public Schools. She was honored as an outstanding educator, community volunteer, and advocate for the disabled.